Welcome to Uncharted Entrepreneurship, your front row seat to daring stories from the boldest business trailblazers forging new paths across industries. I'm your host, Brent Peterson, armed with inside access, sitting down with partners, founders, and CEOs in the entrepreneurial world. Let's explore. Welcome to this episode. Today I have Adele Archer. She is the co-founder and co-CEO of Eterneva. Adele, go ahead, do an introduction, tell us your day-to-day role and maybe one of your passions in life.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. I am one of the co-founders of Eterneva, and in a prior life, I worked in high tech at fast-growing venture-backed tech startups in Austin, Texas. It was my co-founder and I, we actually met while working at a tech company together and decided it was time for us to start our own. And I think it was just very unexpected that we ended up getting into the end of life space, but now something that is so incredibly rewarding. And passion, personal passion, majority of your time as an entrepreneur is hustling and grinding and building your business. But when I'm not doing that, I am a big world traveler and I love languages. And so just my dream upon exit is that I get to go live in the south of France and study wine and study French and just really enjoy myself. So,
Wow, that's awesome. I
yeah.
know there is some good vineyards around Austin. I mean, the
Yeah.
climate's okay. So,
Our diamond facility is actually right out by the vineyard. So it's really cool for any customers, prospects. They can come get a tour of the world's largest memorial diamond facility and go wine tasting in the same day.
wow, exciting.
I know.
I'm also I'm a wannabe I'm a wannabe language person. My kids went to school in Spanish, and I would
Oh,
love to. I've been
cool.
doing Duolingo for 7 years now, and
Yeah.
get a good vocabulary, but I certainly don't have my spoken part down yet. So got to work on it. Maybe I'll
You
go
just got to
to.
go and throw yourself into the deep end. I lived in Spain in high school for a year and I literally couldn't talk to my host family for 3 months, was just mute. But I figured it out and I'm very fluent because of how hard that was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Adele, so before we start, you have graciously volunteered to be part of the Free Joke Project. So all I'm going to do is tell you a joke, and all you have to do is should that joke be free, or do you think we should charge for it someday?
Okay.
So here we go. My email password got hacked again. That's the third time I've had to rename my cat.
That's funny. I'm going to say that that's free just so that more cat lovers can enjoy it.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about the journey. Before we start talking about Eterneva, tell us about the journey and how you got there.
Yeah, leading up to starting it.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, as I mentioned, I have traveled a lot growing up. My dad is a pilot. So I had some really beautiful opportunities early on to just see a lot of different cultures and perspectives, and that really influenced me. But I've always been a very just socially minded person, wanting to feel like I do impact with whatever it is that I do. So my first chapter was actually in politics. My undergrad was political science and economics. Then I moved to Washington, D.C. after that. Did that for a short stint, decided, you know what? This is not for me. I think I've always been somebody that wants to solve problems and, really kind of get to the heart of something. And I wasn't feeling like I was getting there wasn't an ecosystem that shared that mindset in my experience. And so it was, kind of very surprisingly that I met the founder of my business school that I went to in Austin, Texas. And he convinced me to come move to Texas and go through an entrepreneurial MBA. And I ended up just absolutely loving it and deciding, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. And then I decided to, go and work in tech for a while, see how venture-backed, fast growth companies were built, how leaders thought about scale. So that was wonderful. Was in e-commerce at BigCommerce for a number of years, leading product marketing and launching all of our partnered products. So integrations to Amazon, eBay, Twitter, Pinterest, Square, social selling, omni-channel selling. And that was fantastic. And then another company, Trendkite, that did analytics for PR. And then we started Eterneva. And it really was kind of this opportunity to create something that was meaningful and gave back to the world in a beautiful way. And also, kind of incorporated some of the perspectives that I appreciate about other cultures around end of life that I saw in my travels into how we think about things at Eterneva and are now influencing American culture. So kind of ties it all together.
Yeah, that's a great story. I wish this is going to be my only comment about politics. I wish sometimes that politics would run like business, where you're
Yeah,
trying to solve something and move things
truly.
forward rather than disrupt everything.
Right.
Anyways, let's keep moving.
Couldn't agree
We won't go
more.
there. Um, so, uh, Interneva is disrupting the industry. Tell us a little bit about how it's doing that in your thought process to get there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we partner with a lot of funeral home conglomerates all over the country. So I just feel like we are more bridging the gap, in my opinion, between where the consumer already is and where the industry has been and really hasn't evolved and changed. I think for anybody that enters the space, like we started after I lost somebody that I really love. She was my business mentor, Tracy, and we were super close. She wasn't married, didn't have kids, had lost her parents really young. And so she was very intentional with the people in her life, like treating them like her family. And so it was really me, her best friend, her aunt that were her caretakers as she was passing away. And, just really kind of went through that process firsthand of what it means to lose somebody too soon and having the conversation with them, like, what are your wishes and how do we make sure we fulfill them and honor them? And she was like, well, I want to be cremated. And then from there, like, find something meaningful and special you think we would all really like and that you feel like is me. And so we were doing this research. What do you do with ashes? What are your different options? And honestly, not finding anything. Like everything we saw, every website we landed on just felt really antiquated, hadn't been updated in a long time. And the products just felt kind of transactional and trinkety and cheap and nothing that felt really special. And so then my co-founder Garrett and I actually originally we were working on a regular lab grown diamond startup. So we were working with diamond scientists. And as I was going through this personal experience, one of them actually mentioned this technology to me that you can actually turn ashes into diamonds. Blew my mind. And we were actually not the first company to do this. So there was a couple other companies doing this. And so I actually went to go start the process with one of those companies, just in love with this idea. And honestly, that was a turnoff too, was just kind of a similar approach of it being very transactional, not personal, not asking anything about who is this person and, like who are they to you? And then really lacking a lot of transparency around the process. And I think that was ultimately why I chose not to move forward. But just looking at it was like, man, this finally feels like the thing that feels special and meaningful, but it feels like it's getting executed on wrong. And if all the science checks out, we believe there's a way to do this in a very transparent and experiential way. And that was kind of how Eterneva was born. And I think fast forward to where we are today, consumers by far and away want personalization. They want celebration of life. They want something that feels meaningful. And I think what they didn't realize that they need is also kind of that experiential side, because when it's just a product, which is what a lot of the end of life industry kind of has thought about it, then it's transactional. It doesn't really do anything for somebody emotionally. It's just kind of like, here's the vessel that we hold the ashes in. Whereas when somebody goes through our process, it's a long process. We send pictures and videos and updates and just really walk that journey with them. We learn all about their loved one. We make it super personal. And we find people actually come out the other side in a more integrated place with their grief because they've had an ongoing outlet that lasted beyond just the one day funeral, to kind of talk about their loved one, celebrate them, have something to look forward to, and, finally have something beautiful at the end of it to show for that.
You talked a little bit about the company that you joined and you didn't feel like there was a good synergy there. I'm assuming you have some funding now.
Yeah.
Do you have some freedom in how you make your decisions as a founder, and maybe you don't feel constrained on having some backers?
Yeah, so just point of clarification, it actually wasn't a company I had joined. It was one of the original Ashes to Diamonds companies, and I was looking to be a customer, and I was, ultimately not super comfortable with how they were doing what they were doing, and so that was a big part of why transparency and integrity was very important for us day one. But as for being a venture backed business, certainly you're signing up for kind of a different build where you are giving more control away, more equity ownership. But I think what I'm very fortunate and grateful for is that, frankly, this industry is not for everybody. A lot of investors are like, end of life, oh, that's not my thesis. And so I think we actually, more than most companies, do attract investors that like truly resonate with what we do. They believe in our mission. They believe in how we're bringing brightness and meaning to loss and providing kind of an experiential, better experience around it for people. So the people behind us are like our biggest advocates. And, they've been a huge part of sharing this, of evangelizing, of opening doors. And so I feel really fortunate. Like both our VCs, from our VCs to our angels to kind of celebrity investors that we have, there's a more authentic connection and sometimes personal. I think that that's something that's been really like, I didn't expect how meaningful it would be that across the journey of building, when our investors lose their loved ones, we get to do this for them and then we get to deliver it home, and they have like a whole nother level of connection when they see their mom get their sister home and are just in tears saying that was the best experience they've ever had and it helped their grief so much. Like what a different kind of investment to be a part of.
Um, we had a pre-meeting, and you talked a little bit about which category you fit in, and it's hard to find that category. Tell us,
Really?
or talk a little bit about the category, and that you're really creating a new category, and
Yeah.
some of the strategy behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I do believe, in my opinion, that there is, that this is essentially kind of an experiential offering that's never existed before in end of life. As a company, like that is our focus, is serving somebody, in the wake of losing somebody or somebody that's making their plans around, what do I want my end of life to kind of entail, my wishes to be. And I think what is really unique and frankly didn't exist before us is that experiential side. We actually had Baylor University, which is they have a very renowned grief program. They were so fascinated by this whole process we've designed. On average, our process takes like 9 to 12 months to do. So, it really is kind of that period of time that we're walking with people and giving them something to look forward to. And they found that 82% of people coming out the other side were in a better and different place with their grief than people who did nothing at all. And I think it's really, it actually kind of ties to some research around like the stages of grief. The gentleman who developed that, he had the 5 stages of grief. And then he actually went through an experience of losing his son. And he realized there's this 6th optional stage that's on offer for everybody, which is making meaning in the wake of loss. But you only really get there by doing something kind of active in your grief, finding ways to create meaning and to honor your loved one's legacy. So, whether that's doing a diamond journey or, going on a trip that you always wanted to go on, like those are the types of things that we talk about a lot in our content and our community. And, a lot of, the kind of the non-diamond aspects of what we're building, because we want to support more people in accessing that 6th stage of grief.
Yeah, that's great. I know that you just brought to mind a movie. I think it's called The Way with Martin Sheen, and they go
Mm-hmm.
on the Camino de Santiago,
Yep.
and one of his sons has died, and he uses that journey to help him to kind of close that off, and not
Exactly.
close off, but to grieve his loss
Process.
and keep
Yeah.
moving.
And do something meaningful and move forward. That's another thing we talk about, is just like the idea of moving forward with your loved one as a part of your go forward, rather than having to put it in a box and move on, because there really is no moving on. That's just an unhealthy way of processing grief, you know.
Um, you mentioned, or in the notes, we have some bits about being viral, and you kind of being viral in a uncomfortable topic. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about how that works, and I'm sure there's some pushback you get every once in a while.
Well, it was interesting. I think it's just the quintessential entrepreneurial story, especially when you're a category creator, because when you're starting something out in the beginning, like most people don't see it. So I remember when we started Eterneva, it was a very 50-50 reaction of, majority of people had never had no idea that you could turn ashes to diamonds. And then some people were like, oh, that's kind of weird versus, wow, that's really beautiful. And wow, how that's changed. But, something we used to be told all the time is like, this is not a business you could actually build a brand in. This is a sensitive topic. It's too hard. You can't talk directly to a consumer without coming off as predatory. And, we just didn't really believe that. And, I don't know, call us millennial or something, but I think we just like saw a vision for how we could open up a cultural conversation about end of life and a hard topic in an authentic and approachable way. Not dissimilar to the mental health conversation that's been opened up in the last decade. I think this is kind of just a next extension of it. And we just really leaned into storytelling, really good quality video storytelling. And I remember when we were a really young company, at a time that like probably didn't make sense to make this hire. Like we hired a videographer who was great at social media storytelling. And it ended up being one of the best bets that we've ever made because by telling the stories of these incredible people and pets behind the diamonds, because you don't do a diamond for anybody that isn't like the coolest human you've ever heard of. Our stories just kept going viral over and over and over again. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And, now kind of fast forward, we've got 2 million followers and a good like 450 million organic views across all of our content. Like all of that is organically created. We're not paying for our demand across our social channels. And I think it just goes to show like people really resonated with this. I remember I was in Colombia on a coffee plantation, like doing like a tour of a coffee farm. And I started chatting with these other folks that were on it, and they were from Israel. And she asked what I did. I shared, and she was just like, oh my God, my daughter actually just showed me a company that's on TikTok, that's doing this. And she pulls it up and it's us. And it was just like, wow, how cool is that?
Yeah, tell us. So, I mean, you mentioned some celebrities, and I know all those help. Is it? I mean, what defines viral in this? And is it? Is there a? I don't know. Is there a lower threshold for being viral in this type of industry, or is viral viral?
Oh, viral. I think our most viral video is probably at 25 million organic views. So I think when I see other people mention viral, they're talking like 500K to a million. And we've had, dozens that are in the like double digits, of millions of views. And so, yeah, I mean, across like anything that's like 500K and above, I would say we've probably had like 40 to 50. So yeah, like very, very viral. And I think it just goes to show that like loss is such a common experience. They say that 80% of Americans are grieving somebody or like something. And so whether that's a loved one that passed, a pet that passed, or knowing somebody who just went through an experience of loss, I think good storytelling really resonates, and it catalyzes people to go have a conversation, go home to mom and be like, Mom, what are we doing with dad's ashes in the closet? Like, why don't we finally do something meaningful? Or talking to your hairdresser who just lost their dog. Hey, I saw this amazing company on Shark Tank. You should really look into this. Like, that's oftentimes how we acquire our customers. It's just kind of that authentic, conversation that happens at home or around a dinner table.
Do you think um, the appetite is growing for this type of or for accepting this type of business? I go back to Amazon selling caskets, and that's really
Yeah.
transactional, but it was also sort of disruptive.
Yeah,
Does that? I'm
totally.
sure that helps the whole industry behind getting things rolling, and the vision and mission that you have.
I think I don't know if Amazon is influencing things as much as first the consumer. If we look at just cremation rates in the United States, we were only 10% cremation in 1980. We're about to be 80% cremation by 2040, which is just wild how fast that's changed. And with that, I think people are just looking for a big reason that they cremate is actually so that they can divvy up ashes so different family members can do different things. We're also seeing a lot more people frankly kind of leaving the funeral home and having more of a celebration of life at home, or at the beach or someplace that feels a bit more kind of personal to their loved one. And so I think that's the mindset, and people are increasingly moving towards a more kind of secularized, less traditional way of choosing to honor their loved ones too. So that shift is impacting things. And then really one of the biggest things that I saw was during COVID, pre-COVID was, fascinating. Like we would share our stories, and even journalists sometimes would be like, ooh, I don't want to talk about death, or I don't want to write about death. And then we all went through this shared experience together where honestly, death was a very real thing. And it was a very kind of scary thing of, could I get COVID and die? Or, I know somebody who got COVID, like, could they die? Or maybe you actually did have a loved one that passed from COVID, or had, a 1 degree connection to it. And so that experience actually, I saw on the other side of that radically different perspective culturally, and just openness to talk about end of life. Like, we don't have journalistic objections anymore, and it's just fascinating. I think that was kind of really the shift, like a big shift in our cultural mindset, to be like, I guess we have to talk about this stuff because it is part of life.
I want to change gears a little bit and maybe to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey that you're doing or you're going through. And maybe I've always had this curiosity about co-CEOs. Tell us how
Yeah.
you split up your duties and make sure that you're not stepping on each other's feet.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's kind of easy with Eterneva because we have so many moving parts to our business that all of it for one person is a lot. And I can attest to that. My co-founder and I, we've had all kinds of, challenges like across the life cycle of building this company. But, one in particular that was just really personal and really hard was in the wake of, we were on Shark Tank. And right in the wake of that, his daughter was born with a stage 4 brain cancer. And, Garrett had to leave and go fight for his daughter's life. And it was crazy. I mean, she had a less than 1% chance of survival. There's no, recorded statistics of people living with glioblastoma. And she made it. And she is now like basically a studied, she just turned 5 and, is officially cancer free and frankly, one of the first in history. But when that happened, I had to step up and I had to kind of put the whole company on my back and keep everything going without a partner. And that was honestly super, super challenging. And, I think we both really went through a lot, and it took a lot of resilience and a lot of perseverance. But I think with him being able to come back to the company, it was just kind of this mutual, hey, we want to carry this together and drive things forward together. So I think because we went through that, we have a full appreciation for, sharing the load. And then we really just have things divvied up. I oversee our marketing, our care team, and finance and fundraising. He oversees operations, manufacturing, sales, and IT. So plenty to keep us busy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this podcast is sponsored by Entrepreneurs Organization, and it's interesting to hear different people's stories. Do you feel like your education got you to got you what you needed, or have you learned a lot outside of what you learned in college?
I mean, absolutely. Like, there nothing compares to real lived experience that kicks your butt at multiple points. Like that's where the real lessons are kind of physically ingrained, if you will. But I would say I went to the Acton School of Business, and it's like frankly kind of the anti MBA. It was designed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. They take a 2-year program, they put it into 9 months, they make you work 100 hours of work per week, and really are effectively trying to replicate what it feels like to be building a company, where they give you way too much work that you could possibly do in the amount of time allotted, and you have to kind of choose what gets to fall off the plate and how do you fit in your life and your personal priorities around a really intensive, challenging, kind of curriculum. And it's full Socratic method. So a lot of case study prep, and the classroom is all discussion. Teachers only ask questions. They don't lecture on anything, and they'll be like, okay, Brent, you're the CEO of Netflix 2015. Here's the situation. This is your board, what's the plan? And so I would say like it's an excellent program for anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. They really are trying to support you in kind of having practical knowledge and wisdom and passing on their lessons learned as founders. And it primed me, in a huge way for doing what I'm doing. Like, I wish I could go back and do it again now with the experience that I had. I was 23, no business experience, and knowing what I know now, I'd be like, oh, that lesson hits, like it would hit different for sure.
Yeah, you always have to go back and revisit what, and I, as an entrepreneur, always think, that my mistakes are what really makes things, makes it, validates what you've done right. And I think
Yeah,
I make a lot more
no
mistakes than
doubt.
I do it right, but usually the do it rights are what puts you over the top.
Yeah, 100%. No doubt.
Do you think there's a little bit of energy or something magical, not magical, but yeah, magical about an entrepreneur that other people don't quite understand?
Hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are mavericks in their own kind of way. One of our angels is Andy Dunn, and he's a founder of Bonobos, and he wrote an awesome book called Burn Rate. And I think it was wild. I'm going to butcher this stat, but it was something like the population of entrepreneurs is 10x more likely to have Asperger's than kind of a general population, and it makes so much sense because they see things from a lens that other people don't see, and they have a vision and a conviction of what could be. And I think back to when we started Eterneva, it was so clear to me. I was like, this is going to resonate with people. This is such a beautiful way to honor someone, and I have a vision of exactly how to build it and how we can make this so heart forward and visionary and like bigger than just a product, because it's not about the product, frankly. It's so much more and bigger than that. And people didn't get it in the beginning, and we had to kind of show them, hey, here's like what it could be. And now they're like, oh, this is brilliant, and you're like, yeah, it took us kind of thinking about it that way. But yeah, I do think that there's just bless entrepreneurs. I think that they're such change agents, and they create so much opportunity, they create so much evolution, and are just such a example of what's possible in a lifetime if you're willing to play a big game and live outside your comfort zone. So I have a ton of respect for anybody that is building a company and really pushing themselves in that way.
You mentioned storytelling earlier. How important is that in getting your vision out of your head? And I say from my own experience that a lot of times I'm very succinct in my communications, and sometimes people see it as being very terse. Where sometimes
Mm,
you have to tell more of a story to get your idea out there, and then you have to sell your story, right?
totally.
You feel as though that's one of your
Absolutely.
strengths or your partner's strengths?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's personal strengths, and I also think it's like just frankly a huge part of our business model. I think one of the best ways that you can build a brand is like if you sit on really great stories and you can tell them in a really impactful way, whether that's in a written form, in a video form. We just have such a wealth of user generated content. And also, I think that's a really great feature of a business model when you've got great user generated content. That for us is just kind of creating that mechanism of making sure that we just are aware of all these awesome stories as they're becoming customers, and then we can retell them and reshare them. And I think that that's just a better way, frankly, to build a brand that's less about yourself. Because if I'm just talking about turning ashes to diamonds and how great Eterneva is, our technology and this and that, people are like, yeah, don't care as much. But when you're talking about how a mom lost her daughter to an opioid overdose and got to go through this experience, and it created something beautiful and something hopeful, and then she had her daughter's diamond home, and it became the conversation starter with her friends and family that were otherwise too uncomfortable to bring it up because it was a tragic loss she experienced. But being like, oh my god, let me see Megan's diamond, wow, she's so beautiful, like this is amazing. It allowed her to feel so supported, and to really kind of have a way to keep talking about our daughter. And you're like, wow, that's just like so much more compelling, when you're kind of sharing these stories and allowing them to connect other people with shared experiences. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And you've just given us a great example of how well you tell a story. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Adele, we have a few minutes left. It's gone very fast. I give everybody a chance to do a shameless plug at the very end of the podcast. What would you like to plug today?
I would say, well, you've heard me talk about our storytelling. And so I would highly recommend like go follow if you're a TikToker or if you're more into the Instagram or if you're a YouTuber, all three of our channels, have just incredible content. We have just really heartwarming stories. And whether you're, maybe you haven't even experienced loss, but trust me, they are just told in a way that, will make you cry, but in a very hopeful and uplifting way. And I'm told a lot that it's like if somebody's having a bad day, they'll literally go watch our videos on Instagram. So that would be my shameless plug. And I would also say, if you're interested in potentially exploring this process, our website is just Eterneva, ETERNEVA.com. And highly recommend just scheduling a call with our team. We're super, no pressure whatsoever. We just get to know a lot about your loved one and make this super special and personal and walk you through how it works and answer your questions. Then it's 100% up to you if this feels right or not. But, we think it's really important to know the people behind a company and to also understand like how much integrity goes into every aspect of our process. So we would be honored to connect with anybody that, is just curious about the idea.
And I'll make sure I get those links on the show notes. And Adele, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I would love to.
Perfect. Adele Archer, thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a good conversation.
Thank you so much. Back at ya.
Uncharted Entrepreneurship is a production of Content Basis LLC. Copyright 2023. You can find more award-winning content at contentbasis.io. And that wraps up the latest edition of Uncharted Entrepreneurship. Bold tales from entrepreneurial trailblazers. I'm your host, Brent Peterson, signing off after an incredible fireside chat with one of our intrepid trailblazing guests. Their first-hand perspective on conquering the unexplored wilds of business is just a taste of the rare wisdom you'll discover from pioneering entrepreneurs on this show. I also invite you to join me each week for insider commentary on the startup scene and digital marketing landscape on my Talk Commerce podcast. You can find Talk Commerce wherever you download podcasts or go to talk-commerce.com. I'd be grateful if you left a review and rating for Uncharted Entrepreneurship to help more bold founders find their way to game-changing insights that empower ventures to transform communities. This is your host, Brent Peterson, signing off for now. I'll see you around the virtual campfire next episode as we embark on another adventure into the great entrepreneurial unknown.